Yo, what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another section in the Day Trading Institution program. Now, again, the first section, we're going to try and keep things as simple as possible. We're going to be going over today the fundamentals of Forex and what Forex is. So we're going to be covering a few topics today in today's lesson. So the first thing is what we're going to be doing is covering market distribution. We're going to be understanding what buying and selling is. We're also going to be going over the process of the trade itself, examples of trades, well, not like actual chart examples, but just kind of a few examples of how you can actually profit off of the market. So when we talk about the Forex market and the overall distribution of the currencies that are traded, right? The US dollar is the most traded currency, making up 84.9% of all Forex transactions. And you can see the euro makes up about 39.1. So these are going to typically be your more volatile pairs to trade. So anything that has the USD or the euro. And typically these are going to be your more manipulated pairs, like I've said previously. So you can see, the USD is something that is the traded the most. And then everything else is kind of spread out evenly out of the 100%. Then we have the euro in second place, then the yen at third. So we have these three currencies being traded the most. So this is kind of the distribution of the amount of volume that's actually traded. Now, this is important to know because this is going to be how you can determine, where you are at skill level in terms of your reaction times to certain things in the markets, and what pairs you may want to trade. Some pairs may be a little bit riskier to trade because there's more volatility. And when there's more volatility, typically you have to use bigger stop losses and whatever the case might be is, but bigger stop losses also calls for bigger take profits, right? So now let's take a look at why the dollar is, the most traded pair within Forex itself, why the most people actually trade the dollar than Forex. So obviously, one, it is the largest economy in the world in terms of the US dollar. It is also the reserve currency of the world. And then also, along with all of that, it is the largest and most liquid financial, the largest and most liquid financial markets in the world as well. Then also we do have the US dollar now, the US dollar does have a stable political system, military superpower. And then, of course, we do have the cross-border transactions, and that's if Mexico wants to buy, oil from Saudi Arabia, it can only be bought with US dollar. Why is that? Because it is the reserve currency of the world. That is why the dollar is king. So there's typically going to be more news whenever we have big news events going on in the economy. Typically, the US dollar is going to be affected the most. Now, buying versus selling, long versus short, these are going to be basic terminology that we as traders refer to, what positions we're taking within the market. So when you actually trade the Forex market, you can either buy or go long, or you can actually sell or go short on most currency pairs or on all currency pairs. If an individual loses money on a trade, then somebody else basically took their position, because for every single buyer, there has to be a seller. So let's say Juan is buying USD JPY and Joseph is selling USD JPY. Let's say Juan loses money in the markets, and that's because Joseph is actually gaining money in the market. So, both a buyer and seller can't win at the same time, because for every buyer, there actually does have to be a seller. Now, what actually happens when you take an actual trade itself? First, you as a trader are going to execute the trade on your trading platform, whether that be MetaTrader 4, MetaTrader 5, C-Trader, doesn't matter. It's going to go through the broker's dealing desk, because the broker is the one that gives us access to actually trade the markets. They're the ones, that charge a commission for us trading in the markets. And then obviously our order gets put into the actual market. Now let's go a little bit more in depth with this itself. So actually, we're going to stay up here. So now let's do a quick breakdown on the broker itself. So when you actually, before you even execute a trade, you as a trader need to be not in contact with the brokerage, but you already know who your brokerage is and who you're going to have your trading capital with. This is going to be the people that are going to give you access to liquidity, to the market itself, so you can actually trade. So when you make money, it goes back in your pocket. When you lose money, it goes back into the bank's pocket or the liquidity's pocket, right? So when you actually execute a trade, this can either go one of two ways. You have the broker that's putting your trade straight through the liquidity provider, or you may actually just be trading with and or against the broker. So we have actually two things in terms of Forex brokers. Well, let's just say this broker, he is an A book broker, A book. And then this broker, let's just say he's a B book broker, right? So the difference between A book and B book is when a brokerage, now typically, most unregulated brokerages do both. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but you guys need to know this information, right? So when you execute a trade, and depending on if you're an A book broker, right? This example is going to be for the A book broker. When you actually execute a trade in an A book broker, what you're doing is you're placing an order. They're the actual middlemen in this transaction. You're placing an order on their platform, which is an A book brokerage. Now, again, most brokerages do both. Typically, profitable traders will be put in the A book, right? Now, when you actually place your trade, all the brokerage is simply doing is when your account is under the A book, is they're processing your transaction to the liquidity provider or the bank, and they're charging a commission, or they're going to charge their fees, commission, swaps, and spreads. Typically, that's how the brokerage is going to make money through the A book, right? Now, when you actually place a trade, right, and let's keep in mind this guy's the B book, right? When you actually place a trade, and let's say your account is under the B book section, right? Your orders aren't going directly to the liquidity provider, because typically the B book brokerage is going to be the liquidity provider. So you're just placing an order straight to the brokerage. Basically, they're not processing your trade to the liquidity provider. Now, does that mean you can't make money? No, not at all. On the contrary, actually. Typically, when you're trading B book, you're going to have faster execution, less slippage, and things of that nature, because your trade isn't being put into a liquidity provider. And when we talk about liquidity providers, we're talking about the main players in the market. You're talking about HSBC, Citibank, your real big players in the markets, the whales, right? Again, when you're actually in the B book section of things, your trade is going directly to the broker, and you're trading against the broker and the market at this point. But if you make money, the trade goes to you. If you lose money on the trade, right, or the profits go to you. If you lose money on the trade, your money goes to the brokerage, when that's vice versa on the actual A book section of the broker. So we're going to keep this here, right? So when you actually lose money on a trade, and let's say you're trading through the A book section of the brokerage, now you're never going to know if your account's A book or B book. You're never going to know that, right? But when you actually make money on an A book brokerage, the brokerage doesn't lose money because they still made their money on commissions, right? Why? Because your order is processed straight to the liquidity provider or the bank. So if you make money, your money is going to be given to you directly from the liquidity provider in this situation. If you lose money, your money is going to go directly to the liquidity provider in that situation. And with the B book, you could just think about B book as the brokerage being their own bank, their own liquidity provider, right? With A book, you have a bank. With B book, there is no liquidity behind the B book section. Why? Because the brokerage, the brokerage is the bank. Now, again, right, there's going to be A book and B book on all brokerages. Depending on your profitability will determine typically if you go on the A book or the B book section. You guys need to know this, because that's how brokerages also make money. Along with that, they make money through spreads, swaps, and commissions. Now, again, there's two sides of the trade, right? The brokerage being the middleman itself. Your trade is going to be executed to the brokerage, which they will then forward your positions to the liquidity providers, and then they're going to just charge their fee, right? Let's just say this guy's on a completely different brokerage. He's going to execute his trade. The trade is going to go through the dealing desk of the brokerage, which will then process your transaction to the actual liquidity provider. So let's say you make money, you're going to take money away from the liquidity provider. And let's say this guy over here loses money, right? All they're simply doing is moving your money from this guy's pocket right here to your pocket, and vice versa. Same thing. And again, the bank just has a big pool of money or liquidity in theory, right? So fairly simple concept to understand. Now, let me kind of get rid of this right here. Let me get rid of all these drawings, right? So now when we talk about, an example of buying, right? Let's just say let's just say we're going to be trading here gold, right? So let's just say, let's kind of draw a little graph here, right? Let's say we're going to be trading gold. Let's say price is at 1700, and then at our lows we have, I don't know, let's put it at 1650, right? Let's say price is doing something like this, bouncing from 1650 to 1700. This is just going to be a basic example for you guys, right? So when you actually take a long position here, and this is where you enter the market, and this is current market price here, right? As price goes in your favor and you're long, all you're simply going to be doing is you're going to be making money, meaning your account balance will have an open equity that is positive, that is in the money, right? And let's say you want to close your position here. So let's say you bought in here at 5 lots, meaning you're making $5 a pip, right? And let's say this price range difference is 50 pips. So if you're making $5 a pip, and we can get into the more dynamics, we will get into the more dynamics of what is a pip and everything else later on. But if the market goes up 50 pips in your favor because you bought and the value of gold went up from 1650 to 1700, then all you're simply going to be doing is making a $2,500 gain. So now the same thing goes for when you're actually going to be selling, right? So let's say you decide to actually take a sell position, which honestly, what I'm going to do here is just simply move this down, right? Now, let's say you're going to be taking a sell position at 1700 here, right? Let's say, again, the chart looks exactly the same, but you decide to take a sell position here for whatever reason you choose to take that sell position, whatever your logic behind the trade is. If you enter your short position right here where I drew this line, right, let's say at 1699, right, and price goes in your favor, meaning price is dropping, and now it's trading at 1650 for 5 lots, and the market dropped 50 points, right, you're going to be in profit roughly $2,500. Now, determining what lot size you're going to be using is all based off your account balance, but I kind of want to keep things a little bit simple for now. Just kind of wanted to give you guys an example, buying and selling, how you can actually profit, and hopefully you guys did understand this. Hopefully this wasn't too complicated for you guys. But anyways, if you guys ever again have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, be active in the community Discord, and a lot of people will help you out. So hopefully you did understand this, and I'll talk to everybody in the next section.